This week, Apple Podcasts reached 1 million active shows. Wow, 1 million active shows. But what does that mean for you and your podcast? Maybe you've got your own straightforward, one simple show. Maybe you run a network of shows. So what do the other 1 million shows out there mean to you and your podcast? Let's dig into that today here on the Podcast Accelerator. I'm your host, Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder of Rebel Base Media, where we make all sorts of podcasting products. We've got a very specifically, highly targeted focus on helping podcasters to grow their own shows. And that's why we have our product range run by each of our fantastic teams, including, of course, the Captivate.fm podcast hosting, analytics and marketing team. We've got the Academy team running Podcast Success Academy. We have the podcast websites team. I had to think about that then. Why did I have to think about that? It's my business. We've got the podcast websites team, which is run by the fantastic Lester. And of course, we run Productivity, led up by Mr. Ed Townend. So look, why should you listen to us? Well, we're day-to-day podcasting. You know, this is what we do every single day. If Malcolm Gladwell is to be believed, then we became experts in podcasting a long time ago. And of course, this show is brought to you by the fantastic team at AWeber, also experts in their field of email marketing. Now, you might be thinking, Marco, you keep going on about email marketing, dude. Why you keep telling me about AWeber? Well, honestly, the reason I keep telling you about AWeber is that so many podcasters are just not building their email list. I would posit that many of the top podcasters don't own any of their own email data, which means that they can't build relationships or friendships with their audience. Do not be one of those people, all right? Go and use AWeber, markasquith.com/AWeber. Now, my good friend and Captivate.fm advisor, Mr. Daniel J. Lewis, has this weekend released data showing that we're now at 1 million active podcasts in Apple Podcasts. What does this mean for your show? It's interesting. You know, we've seen this growth in podcasting and in the acceleration in growth in podcasting only continues. You know, the number of new shows, if you look at Daniel's data, look at my podcasting reviews, mypodcastreviews.com, go and check out that data. You'll see that the number of shows being added every single month is only getting bigger. And certainly through March, because of various lockdowns, people were just starting shows and you know, tens and tens of thousands of podcasts were just started throughout March. But the thing is, regardless of those numbers, what does this actually mean for your show? Well, first of all, congratulations. If you've already launched, heck, you were part of the first million podcasts. Well done. That is insane. The first million active shows to continue producing. You are part of that. So well done. Give yourself a pat on the back. That's absolutely fantastic. But the thing that we've all got to understand is that it isn't going to take another 15 years, which is what it took to get here to 1 million active. It's not going to take another 15 years to get to 2 million active podcasts. In fact, I think it'll take about a year and a half based on some of the data out there, maybe just a tad longer. But ultimately, podcasting is continuing to grow. And whilst this is a fantastic thing for the industry, you know, we've got so much sponsorship money coming in. We've got brand money coming in there to pay creators like you and I for sponsorship slots. And of course, we've got a lot of VC money coming in since Anchor was bought out by Spotify and Gimlet was bought out by Spotify. There are new startups popping up every single week because they think it's an easy way to make money. But here's the problem. It isn't an easy way to make money. And theoretically, it's only going to get harder with that 1 million shows there. When that gets to 2 and 5 and 10, 15 million, it's only going to become harder because the share of ear will be diluted. And the number of people listening to podcasts, I don't think is growing as fast as the number of podcasts that are being created. Not when you consider things like the time it takes to listen to a podcast. You know, for every one podcast listener coming into the space, you know, they ain't listening to 100 shows or 1,000 shows. They're listening to maybe 6 or 7. You know, so it's disproportionate. The number of listeners coming in versus the amount of shows launching means that discovering your podcast is really, really hard. And this just means that you've got to become more of a marketer. It does. I'm really sorry. It means that you've got to become more of a marketer, or you've got to hire a marketing team. I mean, we talk about that over on Captivate Insider when we release new features for Captivate.fm, the podcast hosting platform. You know, everything we do there is intended to help you to grow your show. We want to help take some of that functionality out of your hands and make things easier for you to market. And likewise with podcastsuccessacademy.com, the growth tier on that is intended to teach you some of the marketing skills that you need. But the challenge is, of course, that we can't do everything. And this is what we need to start realizing, is that if we are content producers, if that is what we choose to do, be podcasters, then we have to understand that we are truly becoming producers, not just creators, but producers. And producers of anything need to make sure that that thing that they are producing is a success. If you're a film producer and your show doesn't do so well, or your movie doesn't do so well, getting the next movie is quite difficult, I would imagine. Likewise, if you're a TV producer, or if you're an author and you're a creator, you're not necessarily going to leave it just at the creation stage. You have to understand that if you're self-publishing, you're probably responsible for a heck of a lot of marketing. If you're a paid published author, if you get an advance on some of that authorship that you've done, you have to understand that people still need to buy that book. Otherwise, you ain't getting the advance on the next book. And it's never been more true than it is now in podcasting, that today is the day that you need to start thinking about being that marketer. You have to start thinking about being that marketer, because if you aren't, well, you're going to have a big problem. You are never, ever going to stand out in that sea of 1 million plus shows. So right now, what do we need to do? Well, I think we've got to start thinking about ourselves as not only creators. It's really nice to say I'm a podcast creator, and it's really nice and soft to say, yeah, we're creators. It's amazing. Let's all put this big fluffy arm around ourselves. There's a lot of podcasting companies, a lot of kind of the OG in podcasting that still don't necessarily do anything in terms of podcast marketing tactics. They don't think about it in terms of marketing. And, when you see various social posts from a heck of a lot of people in podcasting, it's just, get your voice out there, get started, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong, but that's only amazing for you in the short term. If you aren't marketing the show and if you aren't building the numbers up, you are going to get disenchanted. It doesn't matter if people say, well, downloads don't matter. And we've all said it. I said it and I believe it. But I also know that I'm a podcaster and I log in and I look at my download stats. And if my downloads don't go up, I do feel a little bit disenfranchised sometimes. I do feel a little bit annoyed. And I do want to see those numbers going up. So we've got to start to balance this, all right? We have to understand that, there are more and more shows being added every single day, thousands being added every single day. And what are we going to do to stand out? Now is the time. Now is the time. If you've launched already, you are part of the first 1 million active podcasts. Well done. What are you now going to do to stand out? If you haven't launched, now's your time. Become part of the first 1.2 million active podcasts. Go and get started. Take the launch course at podcastsuccessacademy.com. Just get started, all right? Ultimately, the medium's growing up. It's not I suppose it kind of still is to a degree, but it's not the cottage industry that it once was. It's certainly not a giant industry, but it's big enough now where it's becoming more difficult to succeed, all right? And the reason for that is because there's that much going on, okay? So now is your time. You were part of the first 1 million active podcasts if you launched already. Use that momentum. Stop for a second and think about what you've achieved, and then stop for a second and think about what you want to achieve. And how are you going to do that? Okay, and I'm here to help. The rest of the team here at Rebel Base Media, we're here to help. Go and check out podcastsuccessacademy.com. We've got a heck of a lot of resources in there to help you with that. But ultimately, take stock. Now's your time to move, all right? Welcome to the world of 1 million podcasts. What a world it is to be a part of. I'm grateful to everyone that helps us to be a part of this industry, and I'm grateful for you being a part of this industry. So well done. Thank you so much to Daniel J. Lewis for compiling that information and being so studious and conscientious with that data and his methodology. Well done, Daniel. Go and check it out, mypodcastreviews.com. And until the next time, thanks for joining me, and never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.